In the last section, we spoke about how Hitler and the Nazi Party reorganized in 24 to 29, and we finished that section by saying that whilst they had reorganized and changed, they actually didn't see an increase in the number of seats they got in the Reichstag. And then we said the reason for this was because of the policies of Gustav Stresemann, his policy of fulfillment, and the recovery of the Weimar government during 1924 to 29. So what we're going to do now is take a look at exactly what Stresemann did that helped them to recover. So Stresemann was a very good speaker and administrator. He was made Chancellor in August of 1923 to deal with hyperinflation, and he's the one who called off passive resistance in the Ruhr and decided to reinstate the reparations payments to France and the Allies. By November of 1923, however, he had lost the support of the Reichstag because obviously this was the calling off of the passive resistance was seen as the Weimar government backing down to France's demands. So he loses the support of the Reichstag, loses his job as Chancellor, but becomes Foreign Secretary. This is a position he would hold until he dies in 1929, just before the Wall Street crash. Stresemann's policies is called a policy of fulfillment. This means cooperating with France and Britain to remove and reduce some of the terms of the Treaty of Versailles, especially reparations. Effectively, can we make these reparations more manageable, more swallowable for Germany? So let's take a look at the things that Stresemann does, the timeline of his time in office. First thing, 1923 to 24. He's obviously called off passive resistance, as mentioned earlier. He also introduces a temporary currency called the Rentenmark in November 1923 to deal with hyperinflation, and the worthless German currency, the mark. It was issued in limited numbers to grow trust. The Rentenmark had its value based on industrial and agricultural resources. Effectively, what he does here is basically just putting a stopper in to stop that continual cycle of prices go up, so print more money, so prices go up, so print more money. This is him just putting a stop to that, saying we're getting rid of the old currency, we're putting a new currency in, which is based on industrial and agricultural resources. In August 1924, the Rentenmark was then converted into a more permanent currency, the Reichsmark, another new currency now backed with gold. This gradually restored the value of the mark, stabilizing the German financial system and reducing inflation. The next thing Stresemann does is work on the Dawes Plan. The purpose of this is to deal with the reparations payments. Payments started at 50 million, growing to 150 million for 5 years. And after this, payments would depend on Germany's ability to pay. In return, the French would withdraw from the Ruhr. So effectively he says, okay, we guarantee that we'll give you this much, and that will increase as our ability to pay it increases up to 150 million. And then we'll have further negotiations to decide exactly how much Germany can afford to pay each year. The tricky thing here, though, is that the plan includes multiple loans from the US, the first of these being 8 billion gold marks. This is a problem because obviously later on we're going to see the Wall Street crash in which America loses all this money and demands these loans back from Germany, and that will tank the German economy, which is exactly why this period of recovery ends in 1929 when the Wall Street crash happens. For now, however, 1924, Stresemann has negotiated the Dawes Plan, and it's sort of trying to, again, make these reparations payments more manageable for the Weimar government and Germany. Over the following 6 years, Germany borrowed a further 3 million from US banks, and this is invested in industrial growth and also used to help pay for the reparations payments. The difficulty here, though, is the one group you're never, ever going to please are the nationalists. They simply call this a second Versailles. They say, hang on a minute, you've signed away Germany's future once, and now you're just saddling us with even further debt. He says you are just damaging Germany even more. So this leads us to 1925, the Locarno Treaties. What these did was guarantee Germany's western frontiers with France, Belgium and Italy, as set out in the Treaty of Versailles. 1925 to 29 becomes known as the Locarno honeymoon because the German economy was recovering, and we see further developments in the policy of fulfillment, which we'll get onto in a second. Effectively, this is sort of kind of non-aggression, the start of non-aggression between them, a non-aggression agreement, but we'll come to that in more detail later on. 1926, Germany is allowed into the League of Nations. This is a staggering reversal of changing fortunes for Germany, because if you remember, just 8 years earlier, they were sort of ostracized, excluded from the international community. They were seen as warmongers. Now they're allowed into the League of Nations. Germany is recognized once again as a great power and given a permanent seat alongside France and Britain. The League of Nations, remembering, supposed to be a sort of peacekeeping organization set up after World War I. Germany initially hadn't been allowed to join because they were seen as warmongers and their reputation on the world stage was damaged. The fact that by 26 they are allowed to join and given a permanent seat shows just how far they've recovered. As a reward for his works, Gustav Stresemann even wins the Nobel Peace Prize. In 1928, they agree the Kellogg-Briand Pact. This is signed with 64 other nations, which promises that our countries will only have armies for the purposes of self-defense, and all future disputes would be solved by peaceful means, as in we're going to negotiate, we're going to solve things through diplomacy. This is a non-aggression pact, as in nobody will attack anybody. This will obviously assist German economic recovery and growth, because peace breeds prosperity, doesn't it? Whilst this is a very good achievement, on the flip side of it, it's unrealistic to expect a piece of paper to prevent war. So the final step, the final thing Stresemann does before his death and before the Wall Street crash is the Young Plan. Further changes to reparations. A timescale set for the very, very first time. They say Germany will pay these reparations for the next 59 years, lasting until 1988. The payments were fixed at 2 billion marks a year, a reduction from the Dawes Plan, so a gradual reduction in how much they will pay. Responsibility for the repayment is given to Germany instead of the Allies. However, the one group again that you're never going to please, German nationalists. They strongly oppose the plan. They say, hang on a minute, you signed this Treaty of Versailles that we didn't want in the first place. We don't want to pay these reparations to France. We don't accept blame for the war. But now that all these problems that we had in the first place, you're now just making them last until 1988. You're just extending the amount of time we're going to have to pay these reparations for. We're going to be saddled with this debt for the next 5 decades. Alfred Hugenberg, a media tycoon backed by Hitler and the Nazis, pushed for a referendum, a public vote, to oppose the plan. They have the vote in 1929, where only 5.8 million or 14% vote to reject it. Any opposition seems to have been soundly defeated. The problem is, this recovery is fragile. It is all dependent on US loans. Effectively, Germany is dancing on the edge of a volcano. For example, the Dawes Plan had meant that £3 billion had been borrowed, another £25 billion in general things. So it's all okay, all of this. You've borrowed all this money from America, and they're willing to lend it. The problem is, in 1929, you get the Wall Street crash, and the USA are going to need all this money back, and that's going to have a massive impact on the German economy.